That, my friends, is your ultimate chopped beef sandwich. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. And my favorite time of the year is upon us. It is now football season. And as much as I love cooking barbecue and people think that football and barbecue go hand in hand, which I think they do, I do not like cooking food on days that I'm trying to watch a game. I like feeding people. I like having people over to watch games, but I rarely cook for people because my job when a game is on is to watch the game and focus on that. But something that I want to do during this season is to kind of create recipes and easy processes for you guys to create really great barbecue items without eating up so much of your time and your entire weekend just to cook for your friends. So during this time, I want to make recipes and processes that are super easy for you. Whether that means you're just going to wake up a couple hours before kickoff, get it done and forget about it, or having something where you can do it way ahead of time and then just kind of warm it back up and just cook for 20 to 30 minutes before the game starts. I think the biggest challenges for us as barbecue people is people always want brisket from us. But sometimes I'm not willing to give up my entire day before to cook an entire brisket just so my friends can have it the next day. I always want to make sure my brisket is fresh as possible, so that also means that most likely I'll have to be there slicing it too, and I don't want to do that during game day. So what I wanted to do in a video that I've been wanting to do for a very long time is make the ultimate chopped beef sandwich. Recipe should be super easy to do, shouldn't take that much time for you to cook, and it should be super delicious. Let's get cooking. Because we're going to chop this up, I didn't buy anything very specific or super special. This is just a choice brisket from Costco. It was only $3.69 a pound, so it's pretty cheap. And even though we're just going to chop this up, I still want to make sure that we trim it pretty much like I would a regular brisket, because this lean right here is still super thin. Even if we cook this and we try to chop it, I don't want any really chewy, kind of inedible chunks within the chop. If you guys want a more in-depth brisket trim video, I'll leave it up in that top corner for you to check out. Look at that fat right there. That's why learning how to pick briskets in the vacuum seal or making sure that you get it from a good place is important, because you're paying the same price for the meat as you are with all that fat. And some people might also say, well, if you're gonna chop this up, why don't you just take off all the fat and just have just the meat? Some people like to do that with beef ribs because they think taking off all that fat, creates a better bark, and I don't really agree with that. I still do think you need to have a certain amount of fat on your brisket or your beef rib, and that's pretty good. A good amount of that fat taken off. The lean is thick enough to where I know it's not going to get super dry. And now what I'm gonna do is something that's gonna make people upset. It's gonna make me upset too. I'm gonna cut this into 4 pieces. Split the lean and the fatty down the middle. And then I'm gonna take these 2 sections and cut them down the middle again. So this idea kind of came from the same kind of idea as my pulled pork video with getting the extra bark on there. A lot of people seem to really like that video, and to be honest with you guys, that video I just kind of came up with on a whim just because I needed to put a pulled pork video on YouTube. But it ended up being really, really great. I think this will work, especially since we're just going to be chopping this up, and to make sure that we create as much bark, I think this is the way to go. I was thinking about cutting this into 8 pieces, but I feel like it might be too dry and it might get over seasoned. So I think this is perfectly fine. All right, so today I'm still gonna use that rub that I made for my original brisket video. 50-50 salt and pepper with 16 mesh black pepper and diamond crystal salt. And then added a little bit more pepper just because that's what I like. If you are gonna go 50-50, do not do that with Morton's. It will be too salty. If you only have Morton's, my suggestion would be to do a 2-to-1 black pepper to the Morton's salt. All right, so we're just going to drop it in, make sure all sides are seasoned. All right guys, so we're gonna bring this out to the smoker, and if you guys have seen my other videos, you guys already know I've already got the fire going for about an hour 15 minutes or so. Start with some charcoal, obviously have to use that Korean newspaper to make sure the flavor is right, and then threw some logs on top of there and let them burn down just for a little bit, and just kind of preheat that smoker so that by the time we're done with our prep, All we gotta do is throw it in there and let that temp continue to cruise. Let's get this on the smoker. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do this. I'm gonna put the point ends towards the back wall, the lean ends just in front of there. All right guys, so we got all the 4 pieces on. We're gonna keep this temp on the higher side, about 275 to 300 within that hotter range. I'm not really worrying about any pieces curling up just because all the pieces are nice kind of like blocky pieces. And the one thing I don't want to do with this video is just kind of take all those pieces to like 220 degrees and have it be super shreddy, because I think what makes a good chopped beef sandwich is still having that kind of texture where you literally have to chop it up to create these interesting textures, a little bit of bark there, here and there, instead of it just pulling with the strands of like the muscle fibers in the brisket. So they can kind of stretch into almost like spaghetti-like strings, and I don't really want that. Still want to get it into a similar texture as we would a traditional brisket, but the slices are going to look a little bit stranger because we put them into smaller chunks. Is that going to happen? I have no idea. This cook is all about experimentation, but to take this over the top and make this the best chopped brisket sandwich that we possibly can make, there's a couple other things that I want to do with the trimmings of the brisket. I feel like I've seen so many brisket videos on YouTube. Everyone kind of seems to have a script of like what they're gonna say. After you do this Texas style restaurant barbecue trim, you can make burgers and chili and sausage. And while that is all true, I find it very difficult to believe that all these guys who are making barbecue videos on YouTube are actually doing that stuff with the trim. It's not very difficult, but it does take some practice. So just to tell people like, hey, make sausage is not a super easy thing to do. Having certain types of equipment is important, such as having a really good grinder is essential to making burgers and even making sausage. Just because in this video we're talking about making the ultimate chopped beef sandwich, you know, in order to do that, I feel like it's important that we utilize the entire brisket, including the trim, as a part of the process to make sure that we're not wasting anything. All right, so what I'm gonna try to do is to separate all the meat from the fat as best as I possibly can. And again, this is kind of the same process that you would do if you were going to actually make sausage. To maximize the flavor and the brisket and the smoke flavor, we're going to do 2 separate preparations. What we're going to do with the fat is we're going to make tallow, and then we're going to be comb feeding the brisket chunks into this tallow. And with the beef scraps, I want to create a smoked beef stock that I'm going to add into the barbecue sauce that we're going to be making for this chopped beef sandwich. I think it'll just kind of give us another layer of smokiness, and it'll give us another level of that beefy brisket flavor, just kind of in a different layer of the sandwich itself. We're going to take these meat scraps. I'm just going to throw this on a tray right now, and we're just going to stick this on the smoker. I'm not necessarily worried about this being cooked all the way through. I'm going to take this fat, I'm going to put it in a pot, put a little bit of water in there just to kind of get that heat evenly distributed, and just render this either on the stovetop or you can put it in the oven. This can definitely go on the smoker as well. All right guys, so we're about an hour and a half since we put these chunks of briskets on, and they're looking okay. I mean, they look like being around a 3-hour mark instead of hour and a half mark, which is nice. So they're getting good color, but they're far from me pulling it. I want to pull them when they get nice and dark and crusty, the same color that we're looking for when we're deciding to wrap briskets. And down here we got our scraps that we're smoking. We're releasing some of its liquid, so that's going to be nice when we try to make that broth later. But yeah, we're cruising right now. Alright guys, so here are chunks of the brisket that we put on the smoker, and halfway through, just so we could get smoke all the way around, I flipped all the pieces. There is a little bit of fat in here. I don't want to have to strain it out later. I'm going to pick it all out, and then I'll reserve that tallow in the pan and add it to the rest of the tallow that we got. And for this iteration, I'm keeping it super simple. Smoked chunks of brisket and then just some water. We're just going to let this thing simmer for a couple hours, and yeah, it's going to be another little bump of flavor. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our brisket chunks that we have right now. It's been about 5.5 hours. I also temp these pieces, and they're all roughly about that 200 degree, but they're not super tender yet. I didn't want to continue to just leave it in the smoker because I was worried that it's going to just dry out. The biggest thing that I just wanted to do is make sure that I got that fat rendered up top, which I definitely did in all 4 of these pieces. Now we just want to make sure it gets a little bit more moisture. So with that, This is where we're bringing in our tallow. Want to make sure that it's going everywhere and it's covering all the bottom of it. Now, just gonna wrap this in foil. And at this point, you're more than welcome to throw this on your smoker if you want, but I'm just gonna make my life easier, just put it in the oven. Gonna keep it around 300, kind of like we did this entire time, and just we'll check on about an hour or so and see where these pieces, where they are and how they feel, and that's it. We're just waiting for these to get tender. All right, folks, so we got our brisket just finishing up with that tallow, and we're gonna make a barbecue sauce for this. And if you guys have seen my beef rib video, I'm making a similar sauce to this. If you guys haven't seen my beef rib video, I definitely would check that out. And I talk about certain things that I feel like most people do that I don't really necessarily find that important, and how to just make a really, really good traditional Texas beef rib. The base of this barbecue sauce is going to be made from just some sauteed onions. This is kind of the barbecue sauce that if you guys have been to Louis Miller's, that's what I'm kind of trying to replicate. It's a little bit thinner. It has a little bit of sweetness, not too much. The butter is starting to brown a little bit. The onions are starting to wilt a little bit more, and this is kind of where I want it to be. So I'm gonna turn off the heat right now, and what my hope is with the sauce that I'm making today is going to be a barbecue sauce that you guys can kind of create with pantry ingredients that you guys already have at home. Especially if you're a barbecue person, I feel like you most likely have a lot of the stuff that we've got. Now normally when I make barbecue sauces I use Heinz ketchup, but because we're trying to keep this in the realm of Texas, Whataburger spicy ketchup. Next, Worcestershire sauce, apple cider vinegar, brown sugar. Again, this barbecue sauce isn't like a sweet barbecue sauce, but we do want to balance it out with all these savory ingredients, and especially with that vinegar. And then we're also going to add a squeeze of some lemon in there too. So with all this acidity, we definitely want to add in a little bit of sweetness. Black pepper, and a good amount of it as well. And the last thing that we're going to add, beef stock that we made with our brisket trimming. We'll bring that heat back up, and we just want to make sure that we incorporate all the ingredients as best as we possibly can. The other thing that we still need to make sure that we get right is the salt level, especially with that beef stock that we threw in there that didn't have any seasoning whatsoever. We want to make sure that this tastes seasoned and all the way through. All right, folks, the moment of truth is upon us. In the foil, it probably took an extra maybe hour or so for the brisket to feel nice and tender. After that, I pull it out of the oven and just let it sit on the stove top just until it cools down, and I just let it rest overnight. All right, let's open this up. Ooh, smells and feels like brisket. Could have definitely taken over the top and just shredded it up. But if you shred it, it is no longer chopped brisket. It is shredded brisket, and we're trying to make a ultimate chopped brisket sandwich. So let's see how this all slices up. Let's go with the lean first. Hold up, I'm trying to figure out where the grain is because we split it down this way. So, all right, let's see what it looks like. Ooh! Don't tell me that doesn't just look like a small brisket. I mean, that looks freaking awesome. Guys, this is hilarious. I gotta take a picture of this and send it to people. Oh, that's great, guys. Now, let's take a cut of the point. Let's see. Boom, baby. Look at that. Also, remember, guys, this is a choice brisket. For that to be that tender and looking that good, pretty dang good, in my opinion. All right, let's take a taste of this this point. Oh, look at this. This little end right here, all bark. Yeah. Guys, I was really worried about this one, but this will do. This will do. In my personal opinion, my favorite version of a chopped beef sandwich is all lean. We left a little bit more fat on top of it. We also wanted to make sure it's rendered through, and so we had to take off a good amount, but leave a good amount on. Let's get a little bit of this fatty. Okay, and we'll throw that on top of the lean right there. All right, guys, I'm super excited. Let's assemble a sandwich. We got two pretty dang good toasted looking buns right here. Our portion of our chopped beef. Don't be afraid of your chopped beef sandwich being messy, because I think that's part of it. Gingerly going to place this all around. with chopped beef sandwiches, I like to keep it really, really simple, and so I just got white onions and dill pickles. And I'm not even trying to be funny right now. The fact that $1 billion company has done their research, and there's a reason why the McRib only has onions and pickles served on their sandwich. And that, my friends, is your ultimate chopped beef sandwich. All right, guys, let's give this chopped beef sandwich a taste. Guys, this is so good. This sandwich it's awesome. I don't know. I've never really focused a entire brisket cook on making chopped beef, because a lot of times when I'm cooking brisket, my whole goal is to make sure that I can cut through the entire thing and not have any chopped beef left over. But being super intentional about trying to make this the best chopped beef as you can by cutting up into those smaller chunks and seasoning all sides of it, getting a lot more bark than you typically would on a chopped beef sandwich. It's still nice and juicy, it's tender. You're getting the best parts of the brisket made for chopped, which I think some people might think is stupid, but I don't know. You guys make this and you tell me. And even though we trimmed this brisket like we would cook a regular brisket, it was really so that we weren't having any burnt, crusty, dried bits in our chopped brisket. Like this chopped brisket that we have today is perfect. You're not gonna have to throw away any of it. And with the fat that we trimmed off, we use that to confit our brisket chunks when they're ready to wrap. And then we also use a trim to fortify our barbecue sauce. I just love the idea that we haven't wasted a single scrap of this brisket. And if utilizing the entire piece of meat is important to you, definitely give it a shot. I think it's worth it. Again, this is just a simple way for you to put out some really badass food during a football game and still be able to enjoy yourself. This is very, very easy. Trim it up, cut it up, cook it the day before, warm it the next day, and that's it. All right, guys, so that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more of a cooking video, and especially one that's about cooking brisket properly, click this video right here. And if you guys want to follow me along a trip that I went to in Oregon, cooking with some barbecue guys, you can click this video right here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.